Hey everyone, Discordian Kitty here, and I have to say I'm pretty excited about the topic of today's video. I think it's going to be a fun one, so let's dive right in. In ancient times on Azeroth, many thousands of years ago, Xal'atath made some sort of deal with N'Zoth. What was that deal? And what does it mean for N'Zoth? For Xal'atath? For the old gods? For the Void? For Azeroth? And for us? Because these are kinda important questions. If there's one thing we've learned over the years, it's that anything Void related really needs to be watched like a hawk, because you never know what it's up to or when its plans are suddenly going to kick into action. Now, when I say Xal'atath made a deal with N'Zoth, you of course know exactly what I'm talking about. You've played through Xal'atath's lore walking. You didn't skip over it just because you've seen most of these quests already or anything like that. You know there's a brand new questline at the end of it where we learn never before revealed information like how Xal'atath got into that blade that we found her in the first place. But, you know, just to refresh your memory, Lorewalker Cho told us about an ancient stone tablet from Stormsong Valley that's only recently been discovered. The tablet is from the Black Empire, and it tells of a time when the old gods combined their forces to counter an attack from Xal'atath. This alone is unusual. The old gods don't usually work together. They don't particularly like each other, and in fact even waged war against each other. So for them to come together like this had to mean the threat was really bad.
Xal'atath underestimates us. Her attempts to distract us have failed. Even we will work together when faced with such blatant betrayal.
Interestingly, even though the attack was sudden, it does seem like the old gods knew it was coming. Yogg-Saron feels like her betrayal was inevitable, which is fair. Anyone who's ever met Xal'atath learns pretty quickly that her betrayal is inevitable. It's kinda her whole thing. She's like that scorpion that catches a lift with a frog. You know in the end the scorpion is going to sting the frog, it's just in their nature. Y'Shaarj seems to believe it was N'Zoth's decision to build Xal'atath that inspired the attack.
N'Zoth should have known Xal'atath would target Xal'atath when she learned what he was building. Fortunately, our aid will leave him in our debt.
And it's quite interesting how Y'Shaarj doesn't seem particularly concerned about what happens to Xal'atath. Clearly, this reality is N'Zoth's baby. Y'Shaarj is mostly just pleased that helping to defend the city will help place N'Zoth in his debt. I have to admit, I'm not entirely sure why. You know N'Zoth could just decide not to pay, and it would be totally in keeping with that whole old gods can't be trusted thing, right? Either way, the point is, Xal'atath is an alternate reality where the old gods still rule Azeroth, which kinda means N'Zoth's ideal future is the past. And this makes me wonder, does Xal'atath even involve the birth of Azeroth? The old gods were sent out into the universe to claim world souls for the Void. Their whole purpose is to make sure a Dark Titan is born. In other words, a world soul that, when it's born, is affiliated and infused with the Void, rather than with Order. Possibly this is where Void Lords come from, but we're not quite sure. Either way, this is supposed to be what the old gods are focused on, but I'm beginning to wonder if they've ended up with some of their own ambitions, separate from their original purpose. Xal'atath seems to be N'Zoth's attempt to originally preserve and now return to a timeline when he was happiest, when the Black Empire ruled Azeroth. The World Soul doesn't necessarily have to be born for this, and it's possible N'Zoth wouldn't even want her to be born. Maybe that could bring about too much change. We know Xal'atath wants our World Soul, so maybe this is why Y'Shaarj knew she would attack Xal'atath. Because somehow it would keep the world soul out of her grasp.
You shall only watch this world as it gains untold power without you. You shall never lay claim to it.
So we basically know Xal'atath's reason for attacking, but we still find ourselves asking, What is Xal'atath?
Fear this raises more questions than it answers. What is Xal'atath? Is she related to the old gods? What does she ultimately intend to achieve?
It might help to rule out what she's not. For a start, it doesn't look like she's an old god. 2 lines in particular really seem to reinforce this. First, this comment from this guy here.
This creature, Xal'atath, is not like Lord N'Zoth and his kin. She does not appreciate their power or our Black Empire. Show her the error of her ways.
So, Xal'atath isn't like N'Zoth or his kin, suggesting they're not her kin. This is an interesting update, because back in Legion, Xal'atath referred to the old gods as her brethren all the time, including in the Whisper where she refers to exactly the events of this questline.
We may face some of my brethren in this conflict, a prospect that delights me. Their power will be mine. They will pay for what was done to me long ago.
The second line is from Yasharaj, who on the whole really seems quite chatty, who knew, but who very intriguingly seems to suggest Xal'atath wasn't always a creature of the void.
Xal'atath, you betrayed not only the strength of the Black Empire, but the very darkness that embraced you.
The darkness that embraced you. If you're already a creature of the darkness, there's no need for it to do that. This line really does seem to suggest Xal'atath used to be something else, but was infused with the void to make her into this. And for that reason, while Xal'atath might view the old gods as her brethren, they still see her as an outsider. Sorry, Xal'atath, some people are just like that. You'll never be one of them, no matter how much you try. You're way cooler than them anyway, don't be sad. Don't let N'Zoth know I said that. But in other words, Xal'atath may have more in common with a void elf like Alaria than with the old gods. That could explain why those two so clearly need to kiss. So clearly have such a unique rivalry. We can also see Xal'atath is not an old god, not enough tentacles for that. Of course, this whole scene is a memory based on the writings on a tablet. So it's possible we're not getting the most accurate picture here. Maybe Xal'atath actually is the 5th old god and in the scene is supposed to look like this. But as much as I'm dying to see the 5th old god and have been getting more and more worried that its story was left on the same cutting room floor that Bane's Shadowlands story was left on, I suspect the main reason why Xal'atath doesn't look like an old god here is very simply that she isn't one. We also know she isn't a Void Lord, because those are much bigger and way more powerful, and she refers to them as her masters. But she is at least powerful enough that the old gods had to band together to defeat her, but also weak enough that this works. By the end, the old gods have Xal'atath surrounded, and we get to witness exactly what was done to her long ago.
You shall only watch this world as it gains untold power without you. You shall never lay claim to it.
Eternally pathetic. You are mere pestilence, parading as lords. This is not the end of the game, only the beginning. And I have all eternity to play.
The last desperate cries of one who has witnessed the inevitable.
So, if Xal'atath isn't an old god or a void lord, what is she? For a start, it could be as simple as she's a void god. As we saw when the Naru Muru transformed into Entropius, a void god is created from a Naru who not only turned to the darkness, but has been completely drained of light. Void Guards can also be transformed back into Naru, and Xal'atath herself has referred to the Naru as brethren who have lost their way.
I know the Naru consider us horrors to be resisted. We do not share this view. They are merely beloved brethren that lost the true path. They will return to their masters in time.
The Void Guards we've met also happen to look very much like Xal'atath does in this memory. If Xal'atath is a Void Guard, that could be very exciting. Despite all our work with them, the Naru in general are still very mysterious to us, and we know almost nothing about Void Guards. It'd be amazing to finally learn more. It even means that, potentially, we could turn Xal'atath back into a Naru. I mean, I hope not, it would absolutely ruin her, but the thought is intriguing. I'm reminded of the Naru Tur, who gave its own life to save the planet Karkora from Dimensius the All-Devouring, the same Void Lord who is credited with destroying Koresh. If I were prone to wearing tinfoil hats, and let's face it, I am, I might even suggest Xal'atath is Tur, now fallen, or as she would argue, perfected, and who am I to disagree? I mean, it's unlikely. Tur is dead, and all that remains are fragments that are very definitely still aligned with the light. Still, the idea that Xal'atath could be a Naru whose name we already know is a tantalizing enough concept for me to want to keep this one in the back of my mind. Going back even further, at some point Xal'atath could have been a mortal. We already know for a fact that mortals who are infused with enough void power can be transformed into a creature of the void that looks like this, so similar to Xal'atath's own form. But even Dimensius himself hasn't always been the city-sized Void Lord we know we're going to meet in patch 11.2. When we encountered him in the Burning Crusade, he was relatively small. That's because he was just a shadow or a fragment.
I long for the day our masters can truly pass into this realm. You have only seen fragments, shadows, the faintest of echoes. Ask the ethereals what one of these manifestations is capable of.
This is because by the time we met him, Dimensius was badly damaged. And this all keeps bringing me back to the very simple conclusion that the reason all these creatures look so alike and even have similar names is because they are all essentially the same thing, just at varying degrees of power. So maybe Xal'atath was a mortal who somehow gained enough dark power to become a Void God, the void equivalent of a Naru. Maybe Alaria has the potential to do the same. And on that note, maybe Turalian could become a Naru. Wouldn't that be something? Arator is already the child of light and shadow. Why not go ahead and make that literal? In the Ghosts of Koresh preview, we learned that the Shadow God Ethereals stole the Dark Heart because they're planning to use it to revive Dimensius. And not the little one this time. We've been promised a big, city-sized Dimensius. Xal'atath, of course, planned to use the Dark Heart to claim our own world soul. If she had, surely that would have provided her with enough power to transform her from whatever this is into a Void Lord. To me, it all seems very neat and obvious, so I'm probably 100% wrong. I guess we'll see. Either way, Xal'atath is more than willing to play the long game, so even when it seemed like the old gods had defeated her, of course she was already ahead of them, making a deal with N'Zoth.
But that was not all Xal'atath said. The tablet states she whispered in a voice only N'Zoth could hear.
Consider what greatness could be yours if your siblings did not stand in your way. The offer stands. You need only reach out and claim it.
I just want to take a moment and appreciate these slow blinks. N'Zoth is looking exactly the way my cat does when he's hoping to get treats. So maybe they're vicious monsters, but he's an adorable little baby and you can't tell me otherwise. Anyway, we did already know Xal'atath had a deal with N'Zoth, because we got to see them honor it during Battle for Azeroth, and again, more recently, during Lore Walking.
Hear me, God of the Deep. I have brought you the Opener, the bringer of truth, the torch that lights the way. Honor our bargain. Free me to find my own fate.
Go. But the blade must remain to serve my will.
A fair exchange. Shadows guide you, my dear friend. We will meet again. I am certain of it.
Even before the new questline, this deal has been a source of speculation. I've spoken about it before myself. For a start, why would Xal'atath go to the trouble of bargaining for this blade if he was only going to lose it again directly after? Horde players found it seemingly discarded and took it to Sylvanas, who gave it to Nathanos to give to Queen Ashara, who claimed she wanted to betray Xal'atath even though she had been his loyal servant for centuries by that point and had just gone to great trouble to release him. But we assumed she must be telling the truth because when we found her in Ny'alotha, it looked like she was being tortured. Ashara gave the blade to Rathian, who used it to stab Xal'atath in the carapace, which allowed us to get to the point where we could defeat him. No one's seen the blade since. It's just disappeared. For that matter, so has Ashara. So the theory is this. Xal'atath knew we were coming for him, and it's possible he even knew we were going to defeat him, and that he used the dagger to survive. First, it's a very special dagger. It was able to contain Xal'atath's soul. Presumably Xal'atath's soul, or at least part of it, could be safely stored in it as well. Ashara could have fooled us, or Xal'atath could have fooled her. It honestly doesn't matter as long as someone was fooled into thinking it was very important to stab Xal'atath's carapace with this dagger, which would allow Xal'atath to preserve himself in it in some way. Basically, this dagger is Xal'atath's version of a soulstone. This theory has only grown over time. The old gods are able to see all possible timelines, which can make prophecy very difficult. You never know for sure which timeline you're on. Honestly, for all the stock we put in prophetic old god whispers, it's amazing they ever get any predictions right at all. But during a dragonflight quest, we traveled back to Ny'alotha, where Xal'atath seems to recognize us.
I know you. What you were. What you will yet be.
And because this was Dragonflight, that means Xal'atath would be able to tell what timeline we're on, and also that he was defeated and how he would be defeated by us, giving him ample time to make certain plans with a certain dagger. Oh, by the way, Xal'atath also says this.
You will follow him to the deep places. The dark waters will flow in his wake. With many eyes, they will see again. They will drink and be uplifted. Deeper, deeper its roots will reach, welcoming our embrace. Her dreams sing beneath the surface. Our dreams, our song.
I love how the same old god whispers can take on whole new meanings every time you revisit them. What once felt like references to Iridikron and Zaralek caverns now feels like references to Black Blood and the Haranir. Anyway, it was also Dragonflight where we first heard the name Harbinger, and not from Iridikron. Queen Ashara had told her Naga about Xal'atath in the book A Song of the Depths, which also promised Ashara's return. When these things come to pass, the Harbinger will fulfill the final prophecy and complete the awakening. Only then shall our queen return to reign over sea and sky and earth. We must make ready. Rise, rise! Soon all that was hidden will be revealed. Again, it doesn't really matter if Ashara was in on Xal'atath's plan or not, but if she was, then he could have told her about the Harbinger. We would even know what N'Zoth offered to Ashara for her role in making sure the dagger was used in the final battle against him, dominion over sea and sky and earth. Knowing Ashara, that's exactly the kind of deal she'd go for. In the War Within, we heard rumors of Ashara again. When we journeyed to Siren Isle, we encountered Naga who remained loyal to her and excited for her return. And of course, during War Within's new lore-walking feature, we've been given this new quest that has chosen to highlight Xal'atath's deal with N'Zoth. The message seems clear. These events from Battle for Azeroth are still relevant. Don't forget about them, because they will come up again. Which brings me to something else that's been a lingering thread since Battle for Azeroth: the gift of N'Zoth. Remember this? After we played our part in helping Xal'atath and N'Zoth with their deal, N'Zoth thanks us with his gift.
I have dreamed your destiny, mortal. The hour is close at hand. That which was sunken shall rise. All that was sleeping shall be awakened. Receive my gift and see all truths before you.
Afterwards, we could choose to keep N'Zoth's gift, this eye on our foreheads, or we could get a priest to cleanse us. Players who didn't remove the gift could see other players who chose to keep it as well. Even today, if you go back to Battle for Azeroth zones with a character who was never cleansed of the gift, it still shows up. If N'Zoth really was dead, you'd think they would shrivel off or something. And that seemed to be it. N'Zoth's eye never did anything else. You could cleanse it off you, but if you didn't, nothing else happened. You just kept this eye. Hey, remember what N'Zoth said to us during Dragonflight when he saw us in Xal'atath?
You will follow him to the deep places. The dark waters will flow in his wake. With many eyes, they will see again. They will drink and be uplifted.
Again, this is a prophecy we heard after N'Zoth was defeated. It's about his future plans. And then there's the matter of the Black Blade itself. I've always found it really interesting that the artifact's hidden appearance is unlocked with a claw of N'Zoth, which also happens to make it look really N'Zoth-like. Basically what I'm saying is, if you think N'Zoth is really dead and gone, you might not want to bet any money on it. But while we're on the subject, I'd also advise you against betting money on the idea that Xal'atath's deal was only with N'Zoth. Remember, we were only able to witness this scene because of a tablet found in Stormsong Valley. Stormsong Valley is, of course, where N'Zoth was buried. In other words, this tablet is from N'Zoth's records. With that in mind, let's watch the scene again.
But that was not all Xal'atath said. The tablet states she whispered in a voice only N'Zoth could hear.
Consider what greatness could be yours if your siblings did not stand in your way.
It's a subtle thing, but Xal'atath doesn't address N'Zoth directly or mention his siblings by name. This message could have been sent to any of the old gods, and it would be the exact same offer. N'Zoth heard it, so he assumes he was the only one. But what if he wasn't? What if Xal'atath said the exact same line to everyone? After all, if Xal'atath can quietly speak to one old god without the others hearing, she can easily speak to all four. One of the characteristics of Xal'atath is she has this tendency to make her allies feel special. When we read about her past wielders, they always sound like they're extremely taken with her, and also completely blindsided when she inevitably betrays them. Whenever we've encountered Xal'atath ourselves, it's easy to see why she has this effect on people. She's very charming, and also tends to compliment us freely. Basically what I'm saying is, believe it or not, but your Shadow Priest isn't the only one Xal'atath has a relationship with. Yes, I know she's your Naifu, but how do I put this delicately? She's everyone's Naifu. Xal'atath's whispers are so intimate, it's easy to believe they're for your ears only when they're not. And she also just loves to lie to her allies, betray her allies, and of course, pit her allies against each other. So consider this. N'Zoth isn't the only old guard who had a deal with Xal'atath. They all signed up, thinking they were special, that they were the only one. But of course, the other old guards are all dead. Or are they? Lingering old guard influence that suggests they may not be as dead and gone as they seem has been a constant theme throughout World of Warcraft. In the recent Exploring Northrend book, the Bronzebeard brothers make a point of wondering why Yogg-Saron's influence still lingers when he's supposed to be defeated. We dwarves are attracted to mines, so it's not a surprise some of us came here. But the ones who stayed to explore were driven mad by the ore they found here. Saronite, the crystallized black blood of Yogg-Saron, and the source of all that whispering, and the sound of their raving echoes ceaselessly. Bran recognized some of the gibbering madmen as former members of the Explorers League, which upset him deeply. I've seen this kind of madness before, in those who have worked, or been forced to work, in Saronite mines. Magni thinks this might still be Yogg-Saron at work, but why now? Yogg-Saron has been defeated, but the madness continues. Don't know if that gives me hope of helping the poor bastards or not. Note from Magni. The dark influence of the old guard lingers like a blight in places where they once held power. A note from Bran. We need to figure out a way to rescue them without losing more people. They also bring up one of my favorite relics and a source of endless lore speculation, the puzzle box of Yogg-Saron. One artifact found near here was the puzzle box of Yogg-Saron. Never heard of that being opened, and I hope it stays that way. First of all, when a fictional character pointedly says they hope that a mysterious and dangerous box will never be opened, one thing is absolutely certain. That box is gonna get opened. Secondly, this is the second supposedly dead old guard that is also associated with a recognizable relic. If N'Zoth's influence still lingers because a part of him is in the Black Blade, then maybe Yogg-Saron's influence still lingers because a part of him is still in the puzzle box of Yogg-Saron. Which of course makes me wonder about the other old gods. Where might they be hiding? After all, I can't help but feel a certain amount of groundwork is being laid here. If there is one thing MMOs love, it's to give you a questline that involves maybe 4 or 5 really important artifacts to collect or destroy or whatever. I'm reminded that after we defeated Cthulhu in the Temple of Anchorage, we brought an Eye of Cthulhu to the bronze dragon Anachronos, who happens to be Nosdormu's heir. The Eyes of Cthulhu are also mentioned in the Exploring Azeroth series. Apparently, an Eye of Cthulhu was presented to Saurfang, but then kept by an Alliance hero. Nobody knows where it is now. As a token of pride and competition, one of the many Eyes of Cthulhu was presented to Saurfang by Alliance victors. It was said one of their heroes kept it, but where it went after the battle be another mystery. As for Y'Shaarj, well, we already know there was a plan to resurrect him with his heart, and that's the key to all of this. We already know that the old guards and their minions can be resurrected with, well, their bits. It's something we're reminded of in the Lore Walking questline. The Cathraxi general Zakaj died centuries ago, fighting Tyr. But for as long as the creature's body remained in Tyr's tomb, the risk that it would be resurrected again was a constant threat. This is how Xal'atath convinced the Shadow Priest champion to let her absorb it.
Yes, we are eager to feast on the fallen Titan's minions. But first, Zakaj. The cultists may try to stir him again, or he could awaken on his own. We must consume his essence to ensure he is gone forever. You know this must be done.
During Dragonflight, we found a chipstone tablet that talks about offerings made to the Ancient One. We gathered tribute today, as we do every day. the Ancient One continues its meditation. The hunger of the Ancient One must be sated. Strange day today. A familial relation to our tribute ran up and asked to replace our intended sacrifice. Of course, I thought they wanted the honor of pleasing the Ancient One. Yet when it gibbered and pleaded, it seemed as if they felt they should save our intended tribute. This tablet is, well, a Hunger Games reference, obviously.
I volunteer as tribute!
But it did raise questions about just who is this Ancient One who had to be fed living sacrifices. The hunger of the Ancient One must be sated. All glory to the Ancient One. In Hearthstone, the Ancient One is a powerful card. I mean, I assume it's powerful, I don't know anything about Hearthstone, from the Whispers of the Old Guard set. And during a 2016 interview with Game Informer, we were provided a little bit of lore about this creature. The Ancient One was vanquished long ago, but it's hard to keep the minions of the Old Guards down, and with enough of its blood, you can herald the return of the Old Guard's greatest creation. Hearthstone lore is always a mixed bag because sometimes the things we see make it into the official canon, and sometimes they don't. You never know for sure, but at least one bit of this Hearthstone lore is canon. Old Guard minions can be resurrected with their blood, and ever since Azeroth was stabbed by the Sword of Sargeras, black Old Guard blood has been gathering all over the place in the deep places underground. And while we did kind of manage to convince the Goblins of Undermine to stop actively mining it, we haven't stopped this blood from flowing. It's still everywhere. Basically, even if the Old Guards didn't all remember to Soulstone before we dealt with them, and even if they didn't each have their own deals with Xal'atath, they can and will still come back. There's plenty of evidence that they have the means, and we already know they have the desire. And I haven't even gotten into the stranger potential Old Guard hiding places, such as the Darkmoon Fair, though I did a whole video about that you should check out. But my point is, when it comes to the Old Guards, just because something's dead has never once mean that they're gone forever. After all, they're pretty obviously based on H.P. Lovecraft's story about Cthulhu, and one of the most famous Lovecraft quotes is, "That is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange eons, even death may die." And while yes, Magni told us the Old Guards aren't a problem anymore, sometimes characters are just wrong.
The King of Diamonds has been made a pawn.
Before now, we've only ever really dealt with one Old Guard at a time. Imagine having to face all 4, or possibly 5, at once. It would make past encounters seem as easy as they're feeling now that we're all repeatedly farming them as part of the Collector's Bounty event. While I killed N'Zoth for the millionth time, hoping this is the time he'll drop that octopus, I do it safe in the knowledge that the Old Guards are not a present threat. But with midnight fast approaching Azeroth, I'm pretty certain that's about to change. But what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, you can also like, subscribe, share, enable notifications, all the good YouTube stuff. You can also join me in thanking my patrons who help make sure these videos happen. I try to release a video every Friday, and you can also sometimes find me streaming both on here and on Twitch. I'm always happy to talk about all things lore, so while that's all for now, hopefully I will see you again soon.